Picture this scenario. The dark waters of the Persian Gulf are no longer just carrying oil. They are carrying the shadow of something far more dangerous, something that could reshape the entire global economy overnight. Somewhere beneath the surface, an astute-class nuclear attack submarine is gliding silently through the Arabian Sea. Somewhere above it, British Typhoon jets are carving invisible lines through Gulf skies. And somewhere in a London operations center, military planners are looking at a map that stretches from Cyprus to Kuwait. A map that tells the story of one of the most extraordinary military deployments Britain has undertaken in a generation. But Iran thought it had all the cards. It threatened British air bases. It launched drones into the darkness. It turned the Strait of Hormuz, the single most critical choke point for global energy, into a weapon. A weapon aimed not just at the United States, not just at Israel, but at the entire world. And it expected Britain to hesitate, to hold back, to wait for orders from Washington. Instead, London built a steel fortress across the entire Middle East. And what happened next is a story that deserves your full attention. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to February 28, 2026. That was the night the world changed. The United States and Israel launched coordinated airstrikes on Iran in what was named Operation Epic Fury, targeting military facilities, nuclear sites, and Iranian leadership. The result was devastating. Iran's supreme leader was killed. The operation sent shockwaves through every capital on the planet. Iran's response was predictable in its fury, but staggering in its scale. Missile barrages hammered Israeli cities. United States military bases in the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain were struck, causing casualties and serious infrastructure damage. And then came the move that threatened to bring the global economy to its knees. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued warnings prohibiting vessel passage through the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which approximately 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas flows in peacetime. The blockade was not symbolic. It was total. According to shipping data firms, traffic through the strait slowed almost immediately to a trickle. Oil prices surged above $100 per barrel, a jump of roughly 40% compared to pre-war levels. The International Energy Agency described the disruption as the most significant supply shock in the history of the oil market. Countries across Asia began rationing fuel. Industrial production was cut. Thousands of ships sat trapped in Gulf waters, unable to move, unable to deliver their cargo to a world that desperately needed it. Iran did not stop there. In total, 27 commercial vessels, including 13 tankers, were attacked or reported incidents in the Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, or the Gulf of Oman between March 1st and early April. According to the UK Maritime Trade Operations Agency, among them, a tanker leased to Qatar's state-owned energy company was struck by an Iranian missile. An oil tanker was set ablaze near Kuwait. A tugboat sent to assist a stricken vessel was struck by 2 missiles and sank, leaving crew members missing. Iran's blockade was not just a strategic maneuver. It was a sustained campaign of maritime terror. And this is where Tehran made its most consequential miscalculation. Because while Iran was launching threats and drones into the night, the United Kingdom had already started building something Iran had not anticipated. Something layered, something integrated, something that would make every Iranian military planner rethink their assumptions about what modern warfare actually looks like. The first move came from the air when the UK Ministry of Defence announced the deployment of 10,000 British troops to the Middle East. Typhoon and F-35 Lightning jets alongside Wildcat helicopters had already begun weaving a patrol network across the skies of Cyprus, Jordan, Bahrain, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. These were not symbolic gestures. British pilots logged over 120 flight hours in the region since the start of the conflict. That number represents uninterrupted aerial patrols, meaning that around the clock, British air power was present, watching, waiting, and intercepting. Iran's attack attempts were being neutralized before they could even approach British bases or Allied territory. The Typhoon jets, with their extraordinary speed and advanced targeting systems, locked onto threats instantly. The F-35s, with their stealth capabilities, effectively blinded Iranian radar networks, and the Wildcat helicopters maintained continuous low-altitude surveillance, relaying real-time intelligence to ground units below. When these three systems operated together, the combined air power they generated would outpace the entire air forces of many nations. Here is where it gets brilliant. Iran had been targeting specific British installations and naming them publicly. The airbase home to American heavy bombers, the base hosting electronic warfare aircraft, and the base housing attack jets and F-35s. Iran issued these threats expecting fear. What Iran actually did was reveal the strategic importance it knew these bases held, because these were the very platforms from which the heaviest strikes against Iran were being launched. Multiple heavy bombers stationed at British airfields were carrying out wave after wave of precision strikes against Iranian territory. Electronic warfare aircraft had embarked on their first operational overseas mission, paralyzing Iran's radar and command networks from the inside. By threatening London, Tehran had essentially advertised the nerve centers of its own destruction. Every base Iran threatened was functioning as a launch ramp, accelerating its own demise. London had also learned a hard lesson from an earlier drone strike against its base in Cyprus. That attack was a wake-up call, and Britain responded by transforming that base into one of the Eastern Mediterranean's most heavily fortified military installations. Multiple F-35B Lightning jets and over 10 Typhoon aircraft were now stationed there. Wildcat and Merlin helicopters conducted continuous maritime surveillance, reporting every movement in the Eastern Mediterranean in real time. The island was not just a British overseas base anymore. It had become a strategic fortress. Now, to the ground war against Iranian drones. Iran's doctrine of cheap but effective kamikaze drones, the type of unmanned aerial vehicles it had been investing in for years, represented one of its most potent asymmetric weapons. Iran had been launching hundreds of drones into Gulf skies every night against less prepared adversaries. This strategy had proven devastatingly effective. But in Kuwait, the United Kingdom had quietly deployed two systems that would shatter that doctrine completely. The first was a short-range air defense platform equipped with advanced radar. Its primary design objective was singular and unambiguous: to hunt Iranian-made kamikaze drones. Defense officials confirmed during Gulf tours that this system had already arrived in Kuwait and was fully operational. Alongside it, a counter-drone electronic warfare system, the RAF's most advanced system of its kind, uses radar and radio frequency technology to detect and neutralize Iranian drones before they even reach their targets. While the first system provides physical destruction, the second performs electronic jamming. Together, they form a lethal combination. Iran sends a drone. The electronic warfare system detects it and jams its signal. The short-range platform blows it to pieces in mid-air. Years of Iranian investment in drone warfare, neutralized in seconds by British technology deployed in the Kuwaiti desert. And then, the RAF Regiment artillerymen began their night hunts. Deployed to high-threat zones across the Gulf, these gunners lay in wait in the darkness. As the drones glided out of the night toward their targets, they entered the crosshairs of soldiers who had been trained for exactly this moment. One by one, throughout a single extraordinary night, the Iranian drones turned into fireballs and crashed to the ground. The final count was staggering. In one night alone, RAF gunners destroyed 14 kamikaze drones, the highest number ever shot down by British forces in a single engagement. According to the UK Ministry of Defence operational update, RAF Regiment gunners have been successfully intercepting multiple Iranian drones night after night. This record-setting performance earned British forces a designation that sits rarely in military history: the title of drone hunter. Iran was attempting to turn the Gulf into a battlefield. Britain was turning it into a killing field for drones. But London's layered defense did not end there. In Saudi Arabia, Britain deployed an air defense system capable of detecting and destroying 24 different airborne targets simultaneously. Equipped with missiles with a range of approximately 25 kilometers, this system was designed to shatter Iranian ballistic missiles and drone swarms before they could reach their targets. Radars, control nodes, Royal Artillery batteries, and battlefield management systems were all deployed to Saudi territory simultaneously. Saudi airspace was being transformed into a British-engineered armored dome. Any aerial threat Iran directed at that region would be shattered while still in flight. Now, here is where the architecture of this operation becomes truly extraordinary. All of these elements, the jets in the sky, the missile batteries on the ground, the drone hunters in the darkness, were not operating independently. They were integrated into a unified network that functioned as a single nervous system. And the critical node that made this possible came from the sea. A Royal Navy Type 45 class destroyer was directly integrated into the British air defense network in the eastern Mediterranean. The advanced radar and sensor systems aboard this destroyer began sharing real-time data with air defense batteries on land and F-35 jets in the sky. This was not ordinary coordination. A Royal Navy warship, RAF fighters, and British Army air defense units were operating as a single unified combat organism. Data on any airborne threat flowed to the naval platform within seconds, was relayed to the ground-based defense battery, and the most appropriate asset was automatically engaged. The result was a layered defense shield stretching from the eastern Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf that was, by any reasonable military assessment, virtually impenetrable. Additional air defense systems were also delivered to Cyprus via emergency shipments, further elevating the island's defenses to a level unimaginable just weeks earlier. And yet, beneath all of this, in the darkest depths, Britain held its most powerful card. An Astute-class nuclear attack submarine, having traveled 5,500 miles from an Australian port, was now patrolling the dark waters of the Arabian Sea. Armed with cruise missiles with a range exceeding 1,000 miles and advanced torpedoes, this submarine represented a covert spear capable of striking any point from the vicinity of the Strait of Hormuz to the deepest reaches of Iran's coastline. Even if Iran combined every coastal radar, sonar, and surveillance system it possessed, detecting an Astute-class nuclear submarine would remain nearly impossible. This submarine was sending a message from the deep, a deterrent force that cast a shadow of uncertainty over every Iranian military calculation. Drone hunters on land, stealth jets in the air, an integrated destroyer on the surface, a nuclear submarine in the depths. The United Kingdom had constructed a multidimensional steel fist that encircled Iran's offensive capabilities from every angle simultaneously. And now, this story takes an unexpected turn, because the most powerful military commander on Earth was publicly criticizing the United Kingdom. He described British aircraft carriers as toys compared to American carriers. He accused London of entering the war late and avoiding the deployment of warships into the Strait. In a public message, he told allies to build up some delayed courage, go to the Strait and just take it, adding that the United States would not be there to help anymore. But here is the calculation London had made, and it is a calculation that deserves serious analysis. The Strait of Hormuz is naturally shallow and now littered with Iranian mines. Sending billion-dollar aircraft carriers into a narrow-mined waterway against Iranian anti-ship missiles, attack craft, and drone swarms is not a display of strength. According to a European president speaking in South Korea, seizing the strait militarily was an unrealistic option. It would take an indefinite amount of time, and it would expose all those who venture through the strait to coastal risks from the Revolutionary Guards as well as ballistic missiles. London's argument was that it had chosen a more effective path, not the loudest path, but the smartest one. And the centerpiece of that smart approach was a diplomatic and technological operation on a scale the world had rarely seen coordinated so rapidly. By early April 2026, Britain had assembled a coalition of over 40 countries to press Iran on reopening the Strait of Hormuz. The UK Foreign Secretary chaired a virtual meeting which included France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Canada, Australia, Japan, South Korea, the United Arab Emirates, and India. a remarkable alignment of economic and military power. Notably, the United States did not attend. Iran was accused of hijacking an international shipping route to hold the global economy hostage. The coalition was explicitly focused on political and diplomatic measures, not military ones, at least for the moment. The UK announced it would host a follow-up meeting of military planners the following week. The message being sent to Tehran was unmistakable. This is not a bilateral dispute. This is not a US-Iran confrontation. The entire world is watching, and the entire world is organizing. A Middle East security studies expert told the Associated Press that the coalition-building effort was definitely linked to the wider effort by Britain and France to demonstrate utility to the US administration and show that European allies are capable of leading. But he also emphasized the economic dimension. America is an oil exporter. The immediate pressures from the energy blockade in the Gulf fall on Europe and Asia far more than on America. The economic pain was already devastating. Brent crude had surged to above $100 per barrel, a 40% increase from pre-war levels. Analysts warned that the final tankers carrying jet fuel to the United Kingdom were expected to arrive within 48 hours, with no further supplies scheduled. The downstream consequences for European aviation operations were becoming critical. Iran's parliament was simultaneously drafting legislation to formalize toll fees on vessels transiting the strait, a breathtaking assertion of sovereign control over a waterway the rest of the world considers international waters. The IRGC had already begun operating what shipping analysts described as a toll booth system to control vessel traffic. As of April 4, 2026, approximately 290 ships remained trapped in the Gulf, unable to exit. Traffic at the strait slowed to a trickle, dominated by sanctions-evading tankers carrying Iranian oil and a handful of vessels from nations Iran considers non-hostile, including India, Pakistan, Malaysia, and China. Other nations scrambled to strike their own deals with Tehran for safe passage. But here is where Britain's most innovative weapon comes into play. Because reopening the strait militarily once the fighting stops requires something even more technically demanding than all the jets, submarines, and missile batteries combined. It requires clearing the mines. And this is where London has positioned itself as the world's indispensable technical partner. The Royal Navy has undergone a quiet revolution in mine warfare. Where Britain once operated 25 mine hunters in the early 2000s, that number had fallen to just 6 by 2026. But this is not a story of capability decline. It is a story of technological transformation. A Royal Fleet auxiliary vessel was rapidly modified to serve as the floating command center for a new generation of mine warfare. This massive vessel is being equipped to carry, deploy, and retrieve unmanned surface vehicles, underwater drones, and fully autonomous mine hunting systems. The entire operation is designed to be conducted without putting a single British soldier's life at risk. These state-of-the-art autonomous systems, jointly developed with a major defense contractor under a Franco-British maritime mine countermeasures program, represent a genuine first in military history. The unmanned surface vehicles, approximately 12 meters in length, scan the seabed using towed high-resolution sonars, detect mines with millimeter-level precision, and neutralize them using remotely operated underwater vehicles. An AI-enabled command center manages all unmanned vehicles, sensors, and weapon systems through a single digital platform. Defense officials confirmed publicly that some autonomous systems were already deployed in the region. The multi-mine neutralization system dramatically reduced clearance time by enabling the simultaneous destruction of multiple mines in a single operation. Britain's existing flagship vessels are actively serving as management platforms for these autonomous systems. This approach, technology first, risk minimized, precision-driven, represents the greatest advantage setting London apart from every other nation in the coalition when it comes to actually clearing the path through Hormuz. France, co-chairing military talks alongside Britain, has played a key role in operational planning. Japan, which meets a massive share of its energy imports through the strait, joined with the strongest economic motivation of any nation. Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands have leveraged their diplomatic weight to intensify international pressure on Tehran. And on March 19, 2026, a joint statement signed by France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Japan, Canada, South Korea, Australia, and the UAE was issued declaring their collective intent to ensure safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. The message that statement sent to Tehran was blunt. Closing this waterway does not mean a war with one country. It means a confrontation with the organized will of the international community. And yet, the challenges remain formidable. As of April 4th, the vote on a UN Security Council resolution remains uncertain, with Russia and China threatening to use their veto power. Iran continues to deny direct talks with the United States, while acknowledging the exchange of messages via intermediaries. The United States extended its pause on strikes against Iranian energy infrastructure by 10 days, citing ongoing negotiations. Israel, meanwhile, has confirmed it will continue strikes regardless of any US-Iran diplomatic track. So let us step back and look at the full picture, because this is what makes this story so remarkable. Iran's strategy was at its core asymmetric deterrence. Use threats, drones, mines, and the chokehold on global energy to drive a wedge between the United Kingdom and the United States, to make London choose between following Washington into a wider war or standing aside, to sow division in Europe, to make the economic cost of standing up to Iran too painful for any single nation to bear. Every single one of those calculations has backfired. London did not fracture, it organized. Every new Iranian threat prompted the deployment of another British system in the region, another unit dispatched, another ally brought into the coalition. Advanced air defense went to Saudi Arabia. Counter-drone systems went to Kuwait. A destroyer was integrated into the air defense network. A nuclear submarine moved into position in the Arabian Sea. And 40 nations gathered around a virtual table to plan what comes next. Britain, with its tradition of calculated strategic patience, its preference for precision over spectacle, has emerged as the indispensable architect of the international response. Not the loudest voice, not the one with the biggest aircraft carrier in the strait, but the one with the deepest strategy, the most integrated technology, and the broadest coalition. Drone hunters on land, stealth jets in the air, an integrated destroyer on the surface, a nuclear submarine in the depths, autonomous mine hunters ready to clear a path when the guns go quiet, and 40 nations looking to London to lead. Iran chose to aim its threats at British bases. It chose to target British interests. And in doing so, it found out that the most dangerous adversary is not the loudest one in the room. The next weeks will be critical. The follow-up military planners meeting, the fate of the UN Security Council resolution, and whether the diplomatic track between Washington and Tehran produces any results before the looming deadline will all shape what happens next. Can Britain and its coalition of 40 nations actually reopen the Strait of Hormuz? Or has Iran secured a permanent lever of global economic control? Only time will tell, but one thing is already clear. The shadow in the Gulf has met an unbreakable steel fortress.